Welcome to Milk Market Tidbit for the September Dairy Products Report that USDA just released this afternoon. This is Dr. Lawrence Jones with Farm Institute, and I'm recording this on Friday afternoon, November the 3rd. So this is kind of what the report looks like, and I've read 3 or 4 different analyses already, and I'm just going to kind of give you my own take on it. So I'll have to try to get everything organized here. So to me, what the dairy products report does is it actually finishes up the September numbers. And the ones that we get from this report are here in yellow. And those are the ones we're going to focus on and maybe put them in a little bit of perspective of some of the other pieces of this. I do have the percent fat highlighted down here. We did get that in the egg prices, and that came in at 4.08, where we thought it'd be like 4.04, and last month it was 4, so up significantly from last month. So this is where I always get started, which is the production of cheese and how does it look over time. And again, these red dots are previous Septembers. And as we look at this, the projection for the season was actually down quite a bit off trend line, because normally, we see this coming up just a little bit, and we had just it coming up a little bit, but it actually came up a bit more. And so the actual number was quite a bit higher than the seasonal projection. Now, one of the things I like to calculate is what is that current production relative to these previous peaks. And again, I'm not going to assume that that's the total capacity of the cheese industry, but just what they've had before. And right now we're at 96.7% of those previous peaks. So running at a pretty good clip. And actually last month it was like 93.7 or something. Now, the way that this rises is number one, cheese plants are more active, or number two, that we bring another cheese plant on because it would not be included in the previous high. And so we'll keep an eye on that as we start looking at the cheese plant additions here. One of the things I like to calculate is, what is the ratio of cheese to milk? And that assumes 10 pounds of milk per pound of cheese. And so again, we've been on an upward trend in September, about 1.1%. And it came in just a little bit higher than the seasonal number, and so I'm going to estimate about 63% of the milk actually went into cheese. So a couple of things we want to kind of check out on the cheese production is number one, the different percentages. So Italian is always the highest percent. It's on a downward trend, and it came in right on trend line. So again, down from a year ago because the trend is down, but right on the trend that it's been since 2015. The American cheddar came in just a little bit below trend line. We'd call it on trend line. So again, no big surprises. This is cheddar by itself, and so there's 29% cheddar, there's 40% American, so there's another 11% in there. So that must have been the one that came down the most. And this is the graph I absolutely love to build at the end of this, which is my rolling cheese disappearance. It's like a rolling herd average, because disappearance is very hard to figure out. It always takes a couple months to get a good number, but if you do a 12-month average, it actually comes out pretty good. And the thing that I'm looking at here is how flat this has become. Back in time, we would have the production higher than the disappearance. And how can that happen over time? Well, we just added the cold stocks. But right now they're pretty well matched. It says that we've got about 38,500,000 pounds of cheese a day disappearance. And if we kind of calculate all these things through, that we're going to need about 9.4 million cows. And right now, that's where I think we are is 9.4 plus or minus 10. Now, if we end up with 9.35 or something this next month, then that's going to be very, very bullish. But the instantaneous stocks use ratio would suggest that we got 38 days of excess cheese in cold storage. So this is the actual cheese numbers. StoneX had them coming in about 1.15. It came in at 1.152. Those are very close. I thought that there would only be like 62% of the milk go into cheese, and in fact, it was that 6.33. This number down here is just my instantaneous demand kind of number, and it's nothing more than how much did we make and how much did we take out of cold storage. But this would suggest that demand increased in September by about 20 million pounds of cheese, and I'm not sure that we've seen the evidence that would suggest that yet, but that's what this is saying it right now, or else the cold storage will come up quite a bit next month. A couple of things that are not in these kind of calculations is the cottage cheese production, and it came in exactly where we thought it would given the seasonal changes, but look how high that is compared to trend line. This has just gone up and has basically stayed up there and just followed a normal seasonality, because again, it's going to drop off a little bit going into September, and that's exactly what it did. The other is total ice cream. So the red line is the trend line through the previous Septembers. And so we would have thought that this would have been a little bit below trend line, but it actually stayed a little bit above trend line, which means we made just a little bit more ice cream than we normally would have in September. And you can see that this drops off precipitously, through about January, because again, wintertime, people don't eat as much ice cream. So let's turn to butter. This is our daily butter production. And again, this was right on trend line. I'm surprised that they came in exactly where we thought they would. So no big surprises. A couple people have said that, butter was particularly heavy, but it was right on trend line for the actual production. And then if we look at the percent of the fat that goes into butter, these are right on top of each other, right on the trend line and right where we expected it to be. Now I throw this in because this is the egg prices, as I said earlier, were 4.08. And that just has been increasing at 1.1% per year on our percent fat. And so that is significant. Clear back here in 2015, we were about 3.7, and now we're at 4.08. So that's a significant change in fat content of milk. So when we look at the butter numbers, again, I had it at about 136 million. It came in at 144, so that's quite a bit higher. StoneX had it about 139. If we look at the percentages, again, it's 14.86 for typical, 15.6 for actual, and StoneX had it right around 15. So again, there's not a big outlier kind of thing in here. It can be slightly bullish, slightly bearish, but more or less the butter production was as we have seen it here for the last few years. So here's my take. All right, cheese production was up, with more milk going into cheese. Not significantly, but the cheese production was up. Plants are running at 96.7%. And again, if we add a new plant, that's going to look, much higher. But again, right now we're 96.7 versus 93 last month. So much, much more cheese. The disappearance of cheese is flat, about 38.5 million pounds a day. If we're going to add more plants, we've got to get that up above that number, or else we're going to end up with more in cold storage and reduced prices. Cottage cheese, ice cream, and I didn't show you the data, but yogurt were all up. Butter production was basically on the trend line. The other thing that we got to keep in mind is that components are increasing significantly, so we need less milk to actually get the same number of components. And I was pondering this for a while. I was like, how do you make sense of all of this different pieces? And the one thing that I really want to get a good answer to is class one suffering? Because if cottage cheese is up, ice cream is up, yogurt is up, cheese is up, butter is on trend line or up a little bit, something had to come down. And so the question is, what came down? Because again, milk production month over month was flat. So something had to come down. And right now, my suspicion is that class one is suffering a little bit. All right, so this next week we're going to have the global dairy trade. We were 2 weeks between those, and so that's going to be significant. We're going to have the first National Dairy Sales Report of November. It's a shortened week because we have a holiday on Friday and the markets are closed.